And we live in a land that if you build something special, Senator Bernie Sanders will come. Please introduce Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. JD, thank you very much. And John, thank you for your great work. The reason that I'm here is I like JD. A month or so ago, we have a list of people who wanted me to campaign for them around the country. And I got on the phone and I talked to a lot of people and I talked to JD. And here is a straightforward, honest person who is going around his district day and night talking about the real issues, not lying. We see so much dishonesty in politics today, but talking about the real issues impact the working people and the senior citizens of the 4th District of Iowa. Concerned about agriculture, concerned about the kids, concerned about people today who are working 2 or 3 jobs. I just want to say this before I get into the senior issues. Before we got here, we held a little meeting with some folks, and we do this often. When I go out and speak, we meet with some local people, get a sense of what's going on. And it was really, to me, just a mind-blowing meeting. We have a president who tells us how great the economy is. And in truth, for many years, unemployment has been going down, and unemployment is relatively low today, and that's a good thing. But what the president forgets to tell us is that in Iowa, many parts of Vermont, you have people working for $8 or $9 an hour. I just talked to a woman, a single mom, trying to bring up her daughter. Worked for 7 years at $8 an hour, no raises. Talked to a college professor doing important work, having to work part-time in order to, at a Target store, in order to make ends meet and raise her family. And that's what's going on all over this country. You got a Congress today that stays up all night. They're working really hard, trying to figure out how they can benefit the wealthy and the powerful. You got a Congress that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, an issue we have got to deal with. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. Anyone think that's right? You got the top 1/10 of 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%. You got more than 40% of all new income not going to working people in Vermont or Iowa, going to the top 1%. And JD is saying something very simple but very profound, very radical in a sense. What about having an economy that works for all of us and not just the 1%? And when it comes to senior issues, the reason we wanted to do this meeting, we were in Sioux City last night, and we're going to be in Ames later today, but JD and I wanted to do a meeting with seniors because the issues facing seniors very rarely get public discussion. All right? So what's going on with seniors? Well, it turns out that 1 in 5 seniors in this country is living with an income of $13,500 or less. Think about that. Do the arithmetic. How does somebody live on $13,000 a year or $12,000 a year? How do you keep your house warm in the winter? How do you pay for your deductibles and co-payments and health care? How do you buy the prescription drugs that you need? How do you put gas in the car? How do you pay for insurance for your car? How do you do that? And the answer is you don't. So we have seniors in Iowa, all over this country, my state of Vermont, who are struggling hard, desperately hard, sometimes living alone. Maybe their spouse has died. Maybe they're dealing with depression. Maybe they're dealing with substance abuse. Alcoholism is a serious problem for seniors. Who is paying attention to their needs? And we need candidates in Congress like JD who will do that. Now, You know, one of the things that happens in life is we kind of take things for granted. Social Security is one of the things we take for granted. Oh, it's there. Not a problem. It wasn't always there. Working people in Vermont and Iowa fought to establish Social Security. Because as John said a moment ago, before Social Security, half of the seniors in America lived in poverty. And working people all over this country came together to say, you know what, after a lifetime of hard work, maybe we should be entitled to retire with dignity. And that's what Social Security is about. And let's not forget, way back in the 1930s, you had Republicans telling us Social Security is communism. Social Security is going to take away your freedom. They fought it then, and they are fighting it today. And that's why we need a candidate like JD who's going to stand up for the dignity of seniors so that people can live out their lives in security and dignity. Now, what John said and what JD said a moment ago is absolutely the case. This is the Republican plan. They do not believe in government taking care of ordinary people. The great division in this country right now, people say, why is there so much division in Washington? I will tell you why. Because some of us believe that it is the function of government in a democracy to make sure that our children, our working people, our disabled people, our senior citizens can live with dignity. And then there is another party which is busy giving tax breaks to billionaires that says you are on your own. You're not rich. Sorry. Not my problem. That is the division in American politics today. So it should surprise nobody in this room. And by the way, I don't mean to be self-glorifying here. I predicted this before they passed their tax bill. What I said is that the day after they're going to give tax breaks to billionaires and drive up the deficit, which is exactly what JD said, and he's right, day after they drive up the deficit, they're going to come back to the American people and say, oh my goodness, this deficit is soaring. Of course it's soaring. It's soaring when you give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% and large private corporations. And then they come back and say, oh, we have this terrible national debt. And the way to cut the debt is to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So I say to seniors here in Iowa, when you turn on the television and you see Paul Ryan talking about entitlement reform, see, they don't have the guts, although Mitch McConnell did. I will give Mitch credit for being a little bit honest. He was more honest than Ryan. And he used the word Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. But when Ryan talks about entitlement reform, do you know what they are talking about? They are talking about cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Which then takes me to the President of the United States. Not that I want to go there, but I think it's important to mention. Now, I say this over again, and I don't say it with any joy in my life, in my heart. So but the simple truth is I think most Americans know, we have a president who is a pathological liar. And that means he really, you know, every politician stretches his or her point of view, nothing new about that. But this guy has taken that to a whole new level. And I kind of think that it may well be he does not know the difference between truth and lies. I mean, I think maybe a slight problem that he has. But he went before the people of Iowa and the people of Vermont, people of America. This is what he said. He said, I, Donald Trump, I'm a different type of Republican. Maybe some of you recall this. He said, I'm not literally, he said, I'm not Paul Ryan. I'm not Mitch McConnell. I'm not those guys. They want to cut your Social Security and your Medicare and your Medicaid. Not me. I'm not going to do it. Well, the media didn't report a whole lot about it, but the last budget that Trump brought forth called for $1 trillion cut in Medicaid, a $500 billion cut in Medicare, $72 billion cut in the Social Security disability insurance program. Okay, that's what he did, despite what he said. And John made an important point that everybody should know. When you hear about Medicaid, you're thinking, oh, those are programs for lower income workers or poor people. They are, and they are life and death for those people. But Medicaid, when your mother or your father has to deal with Alzheimer's or some other terrible, debilitating illness, and your parents are in a nursing home, more often than not, Medicaid is paying that bill. And when you cut $1 trillion out of Medicaid, that bill suddenly goes on your shoulders. And at $90,000 a year, it's going to be very, very difficult for many working families to be able to afford it. That's what Medicaid is doing. And the second issue I want to touch on very briefly is when Trump ran for president, he made a very valid point. And that is, he told us that the pharmaceutical industry, the drug companies, are ripping off the American people, and that the prices of prescription drugs are too high. Well, you know what? He was right. Unfortunately, 2 years later, the cost of prescription drugs in America has soared, gone much higher than it was 2 years ago. Because at the end of the day, Trump will always side with the wealthy and the powerful special interest against the needs of working families. Now, right now, I will tell you a brief story, and I'm going to give it over to our senior friends here to talk about their experiences. About 20 years ago or so, before I was in the U.S. Senate, I was in the House of Representatives from Vermont. And we went to the northern part of our state, the working class area, and I took a busload of people, mostly women, many of whom who were dealing with breast cancer. These are working class women struggling with a terrible illness. And we got on a bus and we went across the Canadian border. We live 40 miles away from Canada. Went across the Canadian border to Montreal. You know why we went to Montreal? We didn't go sightseeing. We went to Montreal to buy prescription drugs for people who desperately need it. And I will never forget, for the rest of my life, tears coming out of the eyes of these women when they were able to buy drugs like tamoxifen, which is a widely used breast cancer drug, for 1/10 of the price, 10% of the price that they were paying in the United States of America. Drug companies are one of the most greedy institutions in our country today. Last year, the 5 largest drug companies made $50 billion in profit. And yet in Vermont, we have senior citizens who cut their pills in half because they can't afford the medicine they need. Just talked to somebody yesterday dealing with diabetes in the family. Price of insulin is soaring. 1 out of 5 Americans today cannot afford the prescription drugs that they need. Can you imagine that? What kind of crazy healthcare system we have? People go to the doctor when they're sick. Doctor diagnoses them, writes out a prescription. 1 out of 5 can't afford it. What happens to them? They end up in the emergency room. They end up in the hospital. Maybe they die. How crazy is that? We need members of Congress who have the guts to take on the pharmaceutical industry and substantially lower prices in this country. Last word that I want to say about Medicare. I believe that the time is long overdue for the United States of America to join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all as a right, not a privilege. I'm tired about hearing about the privatization of Medicaid here in Iowa. I'm tired about hearing 30 million Americans with no health insurance, and many of you who may have health insurance are underinsured. And that is why we have got to finally say that every man, woman, and child in this country deserves health care as a human right, which is why we're going to expand Medicare to cover all through a Medicare for All single-payer program. Now, you can understand that Medicare for all, that concept of healthcare is a right, of dealing with the absurdity of the United States. And I want everybody to know this. The United States now spends twice as much per capita on healthcare as the people of any other country. Do you all know that? 30 million uninsured, more underinsured, highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We spend almost twice as much as any other country. Now, Trump understands that the fight for Medicare for all is gaining steam. And right now, the last poll that I saw, 70% of the American people support Medicare for all. So that is why you're seeing all over this country dishonest ads attacking those of us, Bernie Sanders and others, who support Medicare for all. And one of the things they're saying, which I wanted to touch on, is they're saying, well, this Medicare for all will mean lower benefits, worse benefits for seniors. That is an absolute lie. The legislation that we have brought forward will expand benefits for seniors, not lower them. And let me give you 3 examples. Medicare is a very good program, but the seniors here know that Medicare does not cover dental care. All right? And many seniors have serious dental problems. Many seniors need dentures. They don't have the money to pay for that. Medicare today does not cover hearing aids, which is another big issue, and Medicare does not cover eye care and eyeglasses. Our legislation expands Medicare benefits for seniors by covering dental care, by covering vision care, and by covering hearing aids. And when people say we can't afford to do that, when you are spending twice as much per capita as any other nation on health care, you damn well can afford to expand and improve benefits for seniors.